Hi, y'all.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. You guys were really in sync there. It was kind of scary. Are we still waiting for a judge?
I think so.
No, I think I'm on. Oh,
No.
wait, that's not.
Okay, because if we are, I'm gonna run.
Oh, never mind. Never mind. I think.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Yeah, there's only 2 of us so far. Also, hi Terry. You can't escape me, I guess.
I know. I saw that. I was like, oh, Keegan's judging again.
I think there's actually 3 judges. Is
Yeah,
Mark
think-
not also a judge? Mark,
Is there-
Keegan, myself.
I am a judge.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we should all 3 be here.
Oh, duh, because I don't pop up on the. I don't know why my own face doesn't pop up in the thing, but I was like, well, there's 5 things, and one of them's the stream bot, so that must mean someone's missing. But good call.
How's it going, Pacific?
We're okay.
No, it's
Okay.
It's Saturday.
Yeah, how's that?
Calm
You guys
department.
are competing tomorrow, right?
Sorry, what?
You guys are both competing tomorrow.
I am. And
Hopefully.
hopefully, cheer.
Oh yeah, because Elsie. What do you mean? Hopefully, you guys are gonna be in ELAMs. Come on.
Yeah, there's no windows in this building, so.
I don't know what time of day it is. Like I walked out of one of my rounds and I was like, it's light outside. It's like, I don't understand.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. I'm sorry. And I'll let everybody know once Brenna gets back.
Did y'all flip?
Yeah, we're DDC is negative, UOP is off.
Cool. Thanks.
Hey y'all, we're good to go whenever you guys are.
I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else need more time, or are we good? Okay. Cool. The resolution: Congress should pass legislation that limits stablecoin issuance to insured banks. The plan is the resolution: Congress should pass legislation that limits stablecoin issuance to insured banks. Advantage 1 is econ. The uniqueness, the first argument is that the US economy is volatile right now due to a rise in popularity of cryptocurrency, specifically stablecoin. The ace point under this is that according to the NBER, the US's economy right now is far more volatile after the pandemic due to a complete lack of regulation on stablecoin. The beast point under this is that Biden has been pushing Congress to regulate stablecoin, but lawmakers aren't budging. American Banker indicates that the House Financial Services Committee is still thinking about the administration's recommendation. The C point under this is that the value of the top stablecoins has also exploded almost 500% over the past 12 months and exceeded 130 billion as of October. Valuation is the root cause of economic instability. The second argument is that the potential for cryptocurrency to wreck the economy in the future is high. The ace point under this is that stablecoins allow shadow banks to stay hidden from lethal economic checks. Shadow banks provide anonymity in conducting transactions, and participants use stablecoins to avoid complying with know your customer requirements, anti-money laundering requirements, sanctions against terrorist financing, and also anti-human trafficking efforts. The beast point under this is that shadow banks essentially provide the function called the shadow depositing, whereby the transfer of this money is not monitored whatsoever by the government or the Federal Reserve, and it also allows for the flow of money to occur without investors knowing exactly what's going on. The third argument is that Congress has been insufficient on this question. The ace point under this is that according to the Treasury Department's Undersecretary Nellie Liang, there needs to be a legal framework or congressional oversight in the form of regulation to check back against stablecoin volatility. The beast point under this is that non-banks, including mortgage lenders, investment banks, and investment vehicles that they created are at the heart of the securitization machine that distributed the risk of the global financial crisis in 2008 that resulted in a lot of negative things like massive amounts of poverty and unemployment. The links. The first argument is that the plan would prevent stablecoin issuance for entities other than insured banks that are acknowledged by the Federal Deposits Insurance Organization. The ace point under this, that limiting stablecoin issuance to these insured banks will cut down on risks, as insured banks have to protect customer assets by law, and the FDIC agency also plans to make sure strict regulations to implement strict regulations to combat money laundering. That will also encompass adding oversight to wallet providers, and others involved in stablecoins. The second argument is that Congress is key because there's existing infrastructure for legal regulation on currency and assets, and the congressional oversight solves for volatility. The ace point of this is that now is key. According to Bloomberg, the risk of overall financial stability will continue to exponentially increase as stablecoins continue to grow into the real world and uses for payments. This is corroborated by a senior administration official for the Biden administration. The beast point of this is that Congress is uniquely key. We were able to get out of the 2008 financial crisis because of congressional action, being able to step in and also increase the robustness of the social programs. However, in a world where stablecoin completely removes the ability for both investors and the government to gauge exactly how much money needs to be spent in order to get us out of a recession, that only results in a higher probability of a recession being a recession lasting longer than the depression. The third argument is that the plan would spill over into more regulation of cryptocurrencies. The ace point under this, that Bloomberg indicates that legislation regulating stablecoin would set down a marker that would include the direction the industry travels. This is critical to allowing oversight over things like transactions related to human trafficking or child exploitation. They can apply. This would allow them to apply the very same resources they use for oversight over traditional banking transactions to those of transactions involving stablecoin onto the internal links. The first argument is that stablecoin limiting is key to solving for human trafficking. The ace point of this, that human trafficking continues to devastate millions of lives, and also criminal conduct happens in our own backyard. According to the Certified Financial Crime Specialist report in 2021, human traffickers use stablecoin to buy online advertisements that feature commercial sex acts to obtain customers. The beast point under this is also how they're able to continue to profit off of the continue to profit off of exploitation, because each coin is backed by a US dollar, which means that they can easily convert that into legitimate money sources, which is precisely what is eluding investors. The second argument is economic volatility. The ace point under this is that Bloomberg indicates that this form of economic volatility, whereby the anonymity of shadow banks allows for people to hide behind the stablecoin, results in things like investor pullout. That it sets the stage for a massive investor pullout, which would result in a wide scale of freak out akin to that of the global financial crisis in 2008. The beast point under this is also that the Department of Treasury says that there is a unique market bubble that's created by cryptocurrencies like the stablecoin, which would become uniquely worse in an event that we don't provide any legal frameworks for restricting this sort of activity. Onto the impacts. Versus economic collapse. The ace point under this, that stablecoin poses a wide range of potential dangers, including inflicting large losses on investors, destabilizing financial markets, facilitating money laundering and tax evasion. The beast point under this is that this has already been seen in the difficulty of social safety nets to be able to cover current social programs, which means in a world of economic collapse as a result of and also the global financial crisis is a precedent for this, leads to wide-scale budget cuts in social safety nets, which means that there's an increased chance of poverty, and also individuals who are in poverty that are living off of these government checks or will no longer be able to survive. Also, we would say that economic collapse will result in resource wars because historically, when the economy has gone down, the United States has required the United States to drill in other areas and get oil in order to make fast money. Also, we would say that this exploitation of land is uniquely bad because it increases the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and the fracking also results in methane going into the atmosphere, which is 100 times more potent and stays in the atmosphere longer than carbon. Next is going to be poverty. Poverty leads to starvation. Also, it takes 7 years off your life every year that you remain in poverty, and the exploitation and dehumanization that comes as a result of that is also is also generational. And also human trafficking is uniquely dehumanizing. Okay, framework. The role of the judge is a public intellectual who should evaluate this debate as a matter of competing worldviews. The judge is a public intellectual who should evaluate this debate as a matter of competing worldviews. The second argument is that a performative policy-making discourse has benefits for outside of this round, allows for activists to understand the structures that they're operating within in order to bring that very same education outside of this round, means that portable education is going to be preferable. The second argument under this is that ontological questioning also results in the stopping of problem solving, which results in short-term annihilation, which is why policy-making discourse is uniquely better. Also, the third argument is that pragmatic reformism always fails because it leads to a relapse to status quo systems of oppression, or a movement infighting, or a co-optation of your movement by the state, which is an indication as to how praxis using the state's institutions will always be able to resolve for things regarding ontological and epistemological violence. Okay, 2 minutes of flex.
Can we get text?
Oh yeah, sorry.
The ballot and the plan.
The plan is just the res. I can put the roll of judgment.
Can we just get the res in chat?
Oh yeah. Let me do that first.
Oh, right there.
Okay, thank you.
I can just copy it.
This is res, and then here is the role of the judge.
Awesome. We can start 2 minutes.
Cool.
What does like the AF actually do?
Yeah, so the AF makes it so that only insured banks can issue stablecoins in transactions, which means that there is a log, and they can be those transactions can be monitored by the FDIC.
What is issuance?
Huh?
What is issuance?
It's like the giving of the stablecoin, like usage of the stablecoin, like issuing money,
Like supplying
issuing
or
coins,
distributing it.
supplying or distributing.
Okay, so issuing would be using the coins.
No, issuing would
It's
be
like distributing the coins.
It would be like if I went to a bank and I wanted to have a deposit, the bank would be the one that would issue my deposit to me.
Yeah.
Okay, totally. All right.
So does stablecoin not exist post plan or what?
No, it does, but it does
It gets
like
regulated.
under FDIC and bank oversight.
So how do post plan, do banks distribute any stablecoin?
Yeah, as long as it's under oversight from Congress and the FDIC.
Okay.
Wait, so they do, so basically banks are still they're still distributing, it's just that Congress is watching the distribution?
And only banks can. So none of these shadow banks and non-insured banks can distribute those. And also
the resolution is asking us to limit stablecoin issuance to only insured banks. So right now, the affirmative thesis is that stablecoin issuance is not regulated just to insured banks, and thus it's volatile.
Okay. Awesome. It's gonna be 2 off. and then the roll the judge page, and then case straight down. Give this one whenever you're ready.
Okay.
It might just no 3 off. Yeah, it's gonna be 3 off. Might be 2. Probably 3, right? Probably 3. Might be 2. Okay. Is anyone not ready?
Sorry, give me a second. We're having paper issues.
Okay. No problem. Take your time.
Okay, we're good now.
Okay. Interpretation. The PMC must specify what legislation is being passed. The PMC must specify what legislation is being passed. Violation. They don't. They just say that. They just say legislation. Standards. One is quantity versus quality. Step 1 A is access quality by picking, but because they get to pick ground first. After this fact, we don't get access to quantity ground because we don't get access to things like counterpoints because we don't know what specific legislation is being passed. It means that kills like engagement. Somebody be like engagement. The fact that we cannot understand. We cannot understand what the affirmative is doing. That means we cannot necessarily have any sort of engagement because we don't understand what the act is doing. Second is Line 35. Legislation regarding crypto is currently in Congress right now. You can pick any of these 35 bills, but you didn't. So that means that we don't have we established clear bright line. You used to establish no bright line. Fourth is MG shifting. Absent a specification, you can shift the MG. If we read it just said, you can just no link out of it and say, yeah, we're not that legislation. Voters want to say everybody issue for reasons of fairness and education. Second is competing interpretations, reasonability, arbitrary and judging interventions which potentially lead to bigotry. Anything else?
No. That's
Okay. Interpretation limits does not include oversight. Limits does not include oversight. Violation 1 is extra T. They say that Congress does oversight. They say post-plan Congress does oversight. That's definitely extra topical because they can a topical version they found they would limit the amount of stablecoin that insured banks get, but it's not necessarily overseeing the stablecoin the stablecoin that the banks have. Same as one bright line. This is not predictable. This is not predictable. We don't get access to things outside of the resolution, which means that this is not predictable for the next. Second is negative flex. Absent the negative flexibility. Oversight could be a counterplan, but now we don't get access to it. It's crossed quantity versus quality. You get to pick, you get quality and quantity now, crossed by the voters. Anything else there? No. Cool. Also limits, but I said that on the last page, so you can extend that. The role of the ballot is to vote for the thing that best deconstructs capitalism, vote for the thing that best deconstructs capitalism. 1. Capitalism is an economic system which is an uncultured drive for profit and peak efficiency, must maintain a proletariat class exploited by the wealthy bourgeois to control the means of production. 2nd, a structural approach via totalizing theory is best. Subpoint A. Performance ignores class analysis, proposes symptomatic solution that stand in defense of the superstructure, guaranteeing the continuation of capitalism and recreation of the harms, allowing for common exceptions that maintain a neoliberal order. Subpoint B. Propagandizing critical. Every socialist movement that seen success has done so by cultivating debate with the masses via propagandizing. But this is why the bullshit lead for the metrics failure. A refusal to compromise imperialist institutions, one that supported the public. Subpoint C is anything else which stands the nature of the state. The state is not bureaucratic institutions, but rather in ideology and people acting in a state standard, which means that our challenge is key. Subpoint D. Evaluate the level of speech actually the word we say in the space can have material consequences, which means our advocacy speak out against the system that maintains global suffering, or they can't, and fiat does nothing, so you vote negative. Presumption 3. The collapse of capitalism is inevitable. The conditions in which they occur are still in the air. Subpoint A. Capitalism necessitates a fundamental mismatch between revolutions of production and revolutions of appropriation, hyper-effective producing wealth that is never disputed. This way we throw in food to solve global hunger 3 times over. Subpoint C. B's cap makes the climate crisis inevitable. The most recent IPCC report says it's co-red for humanity absent large-scale reductions. Also, this is the reason why animals, renewable resource that were once integral to the economy, have their stock exhausted. Lesson links. 1. The consolidation of the US dollar in an attempt to centralize regulation for insured banks entrenches capitalism. Subpoint A. This is an attempt to consolidate risk and decrease potential for failure. This is a direct investment in the stability of financial institutions. Subpoint B. This entrenches the mindset that banks are too big to fail, both causing the reliance of the proletariat and the banking system, ensuring the exploitation is ingrained into the affirmative. Subpoint C is values the position of the proletariat in the organization of the means of production. Subpoint D is ensuring that this is the only insured banks entrenches the role of the federal government. This still allows major risk insurance, the FDIC. Second, I'm going to read. Second is liberal paranoia. You fear monger by basically absent government intervention into money. We're gonna see economic collapse, starvation, and human trafficking. When in fact those things probably aren't gonna solve in a world of state, but we justify the state one more time to people solve this one harm over and over again until we all die from capitalism.
Their firm is probably also.
Yeah. The third link is going to be rationalism. Rationalism has historically been used against communism. To say that communism is irrational and only works in theory, not in practice. Your but that's only used by capitalists. Your apps says intellectualism, whatever. That's bad. That links back into capitalism and is capitalist epistemology. Mm-hmm. Thus, the impact versus anarchic production. Subpoint A is capitalist production is fundamentally chaotic. This is 2 outcomes. Subpoint B is shortages focused on producing commodities for exchange rather than fill the needs, leads to shortages of food and medicine, which leads to 9 million starvations each year and tens of thousands of deaths due to preventable diseases. C is surplus waste, producing goods based on the attempt to produce profiteering results in waste, excess wages, bolstered emissions, and water pollution, both of which threaten extinction from global warming. Second is imperialism. Subpoint A is capitalist economies mature and inevitably their profits slow, and they have to turn to imperialism as a means of expanding pool of workers to be exploited, the resources to be next. B is monopoly capitalism. This makes the transition to monopoly capitalism inevitable. The market's interest to control the means of production misleads political and economic price fixing collusion and the eradication of competition. Third is commodification. Capitalism assigns a dollar value to your body, which means that if you do not produce enough to be economically productive, that means your life does not matter in the first place, which eventually leads to devaluation of all life and living death before you even die from things like climate change. That's the alternative. Vote negative to reject reformism and endorse dual power as a means of producing the material conditions for revolution. Vote negative to reject reformism and endorse dual power as a means of producing material conditions for revolution. That's the solvency one. First, the dual power. Subpoint A is dual power is a method of building organizations, resources at state to fulfill the needs of masses. Second is empirically results or harm. Subpoint A is dual power has been a source of effective social revolution throughout history. Subpoint B is the Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks provided food, shelter, and protection from the state. Subpoint C is Cuba. Cuba had publicly owned gardens and provided dental and medical service to the people of Cuba. And subpoint D is international workers that provided 200,000 workers medical and dental and established tenant unions. Third is the tradition being crushed in the state. Subpoint A's move was firebombed in the 1980s. However, it won a lawsuit in the 2000s, but still survived and won a lawsuit for millions of dollars, which led to the survival of their movement. Second, subpoint B is Cuba. It survived a half-century embargo and the loss of the only trade partner in the Soviet Union, and it still survived Western influence and imperialism. Fourth, premise incomprehensible. Subpoint A is the entire point is draw masses away from reliance on state force. Horizontalism relies on all these socialist platform based on spontaneity. Six is opportunism, which opportunism outlaws any 19-year philosophy major who doesn't actually care about socialism to contribute, which is really bad. Cool. Let's go to the case, or let's go to the roll of the ballot. Extend a roll of the ballot. We gave a bunch of justifications for why it's better. They say the performative policy has benefits outside of rounds, but no, the benefits are only those which can work within a capital social norm. Maybe we can figure out how it's good to operate within capitalism, but we never figure out how capitalism works in the first place. You say the plan that absent your roll of the ballot, you lead to short-term annihilation. We say that no, short-term annihilation inevitably happens in a world of capitalism. It also leads to long-term annihilation, which means that our culture is the only way to solve. They say that pragmatic reforms always fail. We say no. We gave you a bunch of examples. We're probably not pragmatic reform if that always fails, because dual power always works. Awesome. Anything else?
No.
Okay. You say that stablecoin is volatile now, but we say that on the unique, we're going to say that stablecoin is inevitable. It's a question of who controls it. They say that extended private companies are rapidly pushing stablecoin. Meta, formerly known as Facebook, is developing the token Libra. USDC, run by Coinbase, has a market cap of $25 billion, and USDT is supported by Bittrex through the Ethereum ecosystem, has a market cap of $330 million, and Bittrex is also being run via decentralized organizations. So it does not matter whether Congress intervenes or not. There is definitely going to be a stablecoin. And we also extend that other nations are pushing for stablecoin. Look to countries, 82 countries are developing stablecoin, including Nigeria, the biggest economy in Africa, and even research by China. This means it's inevitable. It's just a question of who controls. On the links, we're gonna say massive turn because you talk about how you're gonna lead to more stability or decrease of human trafficking and stuff like that. We're gonna say that no, U.S. being a linchpin is absolutely critical to avoid all the bad things associated with crypto. The U.S. dollar is by far the more stable currency in the world, and most likely to use it mean that it is crucial to ensure effective use of that it's fully based on speculation. And also we say that we say that the plan that doing the plan definitely leads to things like further black market use, because you delink crypto the plan leads to crypto and the black market being further linked, because currently there's a meaningful amount of crypto being used for illegal usage, including drug trade and trafficking. This is hard to monitor because cryptos are decentralized. However, increasing the connectivity of stablecoins through things like bank or through being used through banks definitely means that we're able to monitor that abuse.
No.
What?
No, that's okay. Just keep.
No, you make the abuse worse. Like having the coin attached to the banks definitely does not help solve for abuse. Okay. Also, you say this is key to solving for human trafficking. Absolutely not. It's not going to solve for human trafficking. It's only going to posit that the state can do good things when it can, and also is leading to further harms. We can get you text if you want.
Oh yeah. Yes, please.
Sure. I'm gonna get you K-text first, and then I'll get you theory, because I just need to write that out. Let me write out the T interps for you. Great.
Okay, starting time. Oops, this is not the right. 2 minutes. 2 minutes now.
What's the status of the alternative?
Unconditional.
Cool. Okay, so the order is going to be the spec was first, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna be the same order. Okay. Is anyone not ready?
I'm so sorry. Can I get the order one more time?
Yeah, so it's gonna be the spec interp, the limits, or the spec sheet, the limits T, and then the K in order, and then the framework of the F, and then the rest of the F.
Okay, so same order?
Yeah.
Awesome.
First is the counterinterpretation. Then affirmative need not specify past the resolution. Again, the affirmative need not specify past the resolution. Then we meet our counter definition. We are literally the resolution. We would say that this is a reason first for creativity, and we are able to then take the resolution and have a affirmative that embodies that through our advantages. But also, we would say that this is better for Brightline because we are not going outside the bounds of the resolution, so it's the most stable locus for the debate. And this is better than theirs because theirs is over limiting. If quantity over quality would always get turned in their world, because if there are literally 35 bills and we write about that, then you'd have to have 35 dissats in a 25-minute prep, which means that we can always just pick one of those 35, and that would literally kill any kind of next skew or next flexibility. That means that the MJ would be able to shift harder because there wouldn't be there'd be a less of a depth or breadth of education coming out of the neck for the get-go, which means that your interpretation is actually worse for the standards that you choose. That means that on voters you should be devoted to reasonability. So if we meet counter definition or defense on their standards are reasonably within the bounds of the resolution. Also, we would say that doesn't lead to bigotry, especially when I've laid out the fundamentals for what reasonability would constitute. Next, on the limits, the first articulation is a we me. We're not just technically oversight. We've indicated why insured banks would predicate oversight. So if anything, it would be impossible to meet your interpretation. But also, we say counter interpretation. Limit is to restrict. We meet this counter interpretation because we restrict the issuance of stablecoin, to insured banks. This is preferable to for a couple of reasons. The first can be limits. We provide most precise limits, which is best because it allows us to come to a better understanding of the words of the resolution. But also, we've indicated why this is best for resolutional integrity when we've literally taken the word when we have the actual context for why it means for something to have oversight when an insured bank is literally something that says that it's depositaries are insured by the FDIC, and the FDIC is a governmental agency, which means that there's no extra-topicality, and it would probably be inevitable when we have to regulate issuance to insured banks. But also, I've already addressed their standards. We would say that this is also more over-limiting because of how we have to there's already oversight, which means this would be more over limiting to say that we couldn't do oversight when literally an insured bank denotes that it would be oversight. You can cross-apply the voters from last shade reasonability. Next. On the role of the ballot, I have a few responses. The first, that you can cross-apply a role of the judge, that you're a public intellectual, you should evaluate this debate as a matter of competing worldviews. We would isolate that this is better for deconstructing capitalism when, this is better for deconstructing capitalism, but also you've dropped that ontology and ontological questioning paralyzes problem solving, which means that if capitalism is a problem, you would always just undergird it because, yeah. The next argument is that of state subjectivity. All of us are already subject to the state, which means that all of our knowledge production is implicated, which means even your knowledge production is implicated within this round when you're reading this K, which means that you would resolve for it. But also we would say that totalizing theory is bad because root cause is not reverse causal. And absent underpinning the cultural hegemony of the state apparatus, you don't resolve the harms perpetuated by capitalism. Little A is that Althusser and Gramsci are two Marx philosophers who state that Marx was wrong about the material conditions being dependent on economic systems and was wrong about the material conditions being dependent on ideology, which means that even your totalizing theory is bad, but also root cause is not reverse causal, meaning that just because we see things today does not mean that if you were to suddenly abolish it or do your alternative, that doesn't mean that you stop the atrocities that happened because of it. We also say that the Bolsheviks literally got assassinated, so it's probably a bad thing for you to that's on the solvency page. But we would also say that on the evaluating levels of speech acts, we say that policy discourse allows us to have a stable locus on which to evaluate it. It's also critical because if you paralyze problem solving, then our speech act can never actually be evaluated distinctly. We'd also say that this is inherently bad because it can lead to things like discrimination if a speech act is the only thing to be valued because of our biases as individuals and probably the way that we're subject to the state. So that's just bad. Next, on the links, we say that also actually you can put on the links. Reading K or Cap as well as two theory sheets is probably pretty implicating, and a relink is always going to be worse. The little A is that topicality is a dominant normative that is structured in the same way that legal mechanisms are made by the state. The little A is that you're invoking the letter of the law and punish us while also critiquing the very logic of the state that punishes minority bodies, and that is a link into the K. We also say that procedurals are just tools of the state to create in and out groups. And C, they formulate the ballot as a currency for their advocacy and are doomed to perpetuate the problems of capitalism. Little I is that marketability, flawed ideological superstructure, and present laws that epiphenomenoal and derivative tool harnessed by unequal oppression and ideological purposes. But the D is also the notion that there's a singular interpretation is the same zero-sum logic that capital uses for resource allocation, resource wars. You should be evaluating relinks at a higher degree than links because it means that it's a linear it's non-unique, i.e. the affirmative is not the unique instance in which this happens. You should also be evaluating relinks as higher because it's manslaughter versus murder. They ran the strategy knowing what they were running going into round, whereas we're from a point of ignorance. We would also say that that also means all of the links should be evaluated as linear, not a reason to vote us down because it's another instance other than the app that would be causing their harms. That means on the deconsolidation, the liberal paranoia, and the rationalism, we would say that this would all be operating outside of the world of the apps and not a reason to vote us down, but also we probably have inroads to solving things like liberal paranoia when you conceded that problem solving is gutted in a world in which we don't use policymaking. We'd also say that's probably better for combating rationalism as well because of how we're able to come together in a form of debate to pit ideas against each other in a structure that doesn't allow for biases that would have taken out the communists like you claim. Next, on the impacts, this also means that if the impact should be viewed as linear, not a reason to vote us down either. We would say that we have inroads in the app isn't something that you should be sacrificing. Do you want anything else on the impacts? No. Okay, cool. Next, on to the alternative. Permutation, Congress should pass legislation that limits stablecoin issuance to insured banks, and you should reject reformism and endorse dual power as a means of producing the material condition. Again, you should do the plan and reject reformism and endorse dual power as means of producing the material condition. This is legitimate because you're doing all the plan and all or some of the alternative. We also say that there's a perm double bind either, and the perm should swamp to any of the links to the affirmative case. But also we say that this is a double bind. Either your movement is so powerful and strong that it can overcome any links to the K, any links to the affirmative, or it's not strong enough and it would just be co-opted by movements. We'd also say that your alternative would have no solvency because dual power and the interpretations of how capitalist revolution should function are ultimately not agreed upon, which means that there would be movement infighting and wealthy elites that already you've even indicated have already co-opted the structure would just basically assault and violently quash the people that are not elite, which means your alternative would never resolve.
Yeah. Also, the Bolsheviks were like literally annihilated.
Yeah, and the Bolsheviks were annihilated. Probably an indication as to why you shouldn't be risking for something that either is so powerful that it should overcome the link to the affirmative, or not powerful enough and not a reason to risk the affirmative. We also say on this perm stuff about horizontalism, this was just blipped out. We would say that we should be able to resolve that through problem solving and policy making. Next, onto the framework, I want you to extend the role of the ballot. I've already done a lot of the work on the K, but also about why performative policy is going to be good because of the ways in which not only are we already subject to the state, so their capitalism stuff doesn't have credibility here, but also that root cause being reverse causal doesn't mean that you can stop sacrificing the claims of problem solving. Next, on the case, I just want you to extend all of the uniqueness, particularly about why there's volatility now and why, unless Congress intervenes in making these things be issued from banks, you'll just be seeing like an economic collapse. The only thing they say is that there's like 330 million stablecoin elsewhere. Cool, just put those into a bank and make sure that that insured banks are the only ones that can issue them. We also say on these terms that doesn't make sense. Literally, Brenda, we're isolating why this abuse is made possible because there's literally no check on the individual who uses a stablecoin to then lead to human trafficking. That means that you can extend all of the internal links about human trafficking as well as economic volatility that leads to equal collapse and as well as poverty. Also, even because it just leads to poverty, which is why you should use that plan.
Okay, 1 minute.
Actually,
do you want counter tips?
yeah, sure.
Can we get counter tips?
Oh yeah.
Is to restrict.
Oh my god, why does this keep
Oh, wait,
happening?
do limits is restrict.
Okay, limit.
Limits restrict. And yeah, leave off. That's why I passed. Okay, next slide.
I spelled that wrong. I don't know.
Perfect. We can start in a minute.
When did the Soviet Union collapse?
Mid 90s.
Cool.
Or 1900s. So not 90s, 1900s.
All right, 8 minutes. The order is gonna be The order is gonna be probably the overview, theory, critique. Sound right? Yeah.
And then their framework stuff on framework.
Yeah. Okay. Overview, theory, critique. Anybody not ready?
Do you want overview on a different sheet?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. I mean, if you want to. Up to you. All right. Anybody not ready? Way too many concessions on the framework of the criticism mean that it's not actually a question of whether we can actually resolve for the impacts of the app. It's a question as to what, and we are using our limited time in this space where we also resolve every single impact of the affirmative, which means it's going to be a clean ballot for the negative in this debate. First, on the theory sheets, we'll go ahead and extend the we meet on limits, and then extend like the counter interp on that. We're not going through.
There's no offense. RBIs
No
are
offense
stupid.
here.
Don't let them make new
RBIs
ones.
are stupid. Don't let them make new ones. Okay, on the app. You have conceded a similar role of response here. We say that stablecoin is probably inevitable and is stabilizing right now in the status quo, which means that the union is totally in the wrong direction. We say that Facebook and other companies are right now working to stabilize this currency, which means that you only risk reversing that those efforts.
No. Like their impacts are going to happen inevitably without radical change in the system.
Yeah, your impacts are also probably inevitable without radical change in the system. We definitely control the root cause of economic volatility. Anything else you want?
They don't extend a single impact. Also, they've conceded that the state is the mass
voices in this debate, but but then we say that literally you have conceded all of our analysis coming out of the gate about why the state is not institutions, but the people acting in an institutional manner, which means that we definitely have a choice to reject that and say that's a really bad way of thinking in the first place. They say that the Bolsheviks got assassinated, lol, not until the 90s, but then they also say that problem solving comes before speech acts. We're going to say that we're definitely the prior question, because it doesn't matter if you solve problems, if those you misidentify the problems, or you don't solve you solve the problems by using the state. That's always going to be bad. Also, it's not a question of whether you actually get to feel out your impacts. Your impacts literally never happen. It's a question of what kind of rhetoric we use to justify them in the first place. They said this leads to biases. No, we're saying that capitalism is probably the root cause of those, and we definitely solve. With that being said, I want you to extend that a structural approach is key. Anything else would continue the harms of capitalism. That we have a choice of what words we use in this space. That propagandizing is necessarily zero sum. You have to be all in on what you propagandize. That takes out the perm. But additionally, we tell you that the state is not a collection of institutions, but rather people who choose to act in that manner. It's rather an ideological apparatus that we can unplug from, which means that we should definitely do that in that space. But you have also conceded that the only way you evaluate this debate is at the level of speech tax. They're going to go really hard for this stuff about solving human trafficking. A, those impacts weren't extended in the MG. But B, you don't actually ever solve for those. All you do is cultivate reliance on a state that creates the root cause for those problems in the first place. But additionally, the collapse of capitalism is inevitable, means it's try or die for the alternative to imagine a future outside of that.
All right, LOR's on a new sheet. Cool. Anyone not ready? GG Pacific, but you have conceded that capitalism is the root cause of your affirmative. Also, you have not extended a single impact coming out of your case, which means that you do not have any solvency and no impacts go for in the PMR. Let's talk about why the criticism necessarily comes first and also resolves the affirmative. First on framework. If I can find it, okay. I want you to extend that a structural approach via totalizing theory is best, and it's a question of propagandizing. We do not necessarily need win they're going to go probably really hard for these railings questions that they don't outframe us, but it's a question of their speech acts. They chose to endorse a system that leads to things like imperialism, that leads to economic volatility, and that necessarily leads to human trafficking. That is definitely a clear link, because we are saying that we should propagandize against the system. The only thing that we get out of debate is education. It is a question of the words we say in the space and the education that we get. We are telling the judges to endorse dual power and to reject capitalism, the violence that it brings. So that means that this is the only level in which you can bring it about. It does not matter if they say the plan is theoretically good, because guess what? They're fiating it. It never happens. But what does happen is the education that we get out of the state from the words that Tris and I have chosen to speak in this debate. I want you to specifically understand that anything else misunderstanding the nature of the state, that it is people acting in a statist manner, that means that we as individuals, we as Tristan and Brenna have the ability to challenge capitalism by speaking out against it. However, thinking in a statist manner the way the Pacific has by saying that we should endorse the state and the state can do the good things is the state itself, because the state is just people thinking in a statist manner. That is a clear link, and clearly Alpha frames all of their other articulations. Tristan does a really good job on why totalizing theory specifically is good, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel there, but they're probably going to go really hard for their own framework, but it doesn't solve for capitalism. Also, we're better methodology anyway. Anything else on framework?
No.
Okay. Let's go to links. Okay. They have conceded the majority of the links, so I don't really need to do any work here. The risk of the permutation means that we risk back into the links and also the dissets on to the permutation. The thing they're going to go really hard for right here is relinks, but Tristan does a really good job here. Capitalism literally is deregulation, not regulation. So we are not the logic of capitalism. We are saying that there are certain things that you should do to be fair. Capitalism says we should not do certain things and should be super unfair, which is definitely which we are the antithesis of the capitalist logic, and also it's a question of procedure versus structural fairness. Links are conceded. Extend them clean across. They are the consolidation of banks and also liberal paranoia, because they say, guess what? Bad things are happening, but the capitalist state can save us. It is the savior. That means that they are propagandists in favor of capitalism and give people the statist mindset, which upholds the state. The state is only inevitable in a world of the permutation. Let's go to the impacts. I want you to specifically extend imperialism and commodification. These are the root cause of any single impact that they're going to be going for in the PMR. They might go for human trafficking. First, you didn't extend that. Second, imperialism and commodification is for the root cause. Capitalism assigns a dollar value to your body, which is literally what human trafficking is. But however, if dual power is able to solve the impacts, I mean that we are able to solve the root cause. Also, they can see, yeah, that's fine. This impact also is definitely going to outweigh any other impact in the debate on a question of probability and magnitude, because, yeah, on a question of probability and magnitude, they're happening right now. They're global. We can resolve for it. Let's go to the alt. I want you to extend the alternative solves the criticism. They've conceded all of our articulations, specifically talking about Cuba and move. They're probably getting really hard for the Bolsheviks were assassinated. They literally weren't. Yeah, the Soviet Union collapsed after literally decades of being the biggest power in the world. And also, if we present a unified strategy in which everyone in the world is able to do it, that means that like we're not going to see the collapse of certain countries in the first place. And also, yeah, the K solves the alt solves the criticism. Also, the alt solves the root cause of the K because volatility is because of the app, because volatility because of capitalism in the first place and because of the free market. They're probably going to go really hard for the permutation, but there's a couple of articulations here. Tristan raised you literally 6 answers why the perm is incompatible. Any risk of linking back into the links or the distance is a reason to direct the permutation. There's no impact to the affirmative. There's no benefit to the permutation. Also, I want you to symbol this as a horizontalism and opportunism. In war of the permutation, we recreate status and capital social relations, which means that they only recreate the harms of the affirmative and the harm of the K.
Okay. Oh my. 1 minute starting now. The order is going to be an overview, the AF and the framework and advantage, and then the K in order. Does anyone need the order again?
Yeah, sorry, just one more time.
Sure. It's going to be an overview, the AF in the order of framework and then advantage, and then the K in order.
Perfect.
Cool. Anyone? Ugh. Okay, sorry. My page refreshed where our prep doc's on. Anyone not ready? Cool. You will be voting for Pacific SS in today's debate in order to resolve from mass amounts of poverty that results from an impending recession on a bigger scale than that of the Great Recession. They've conceded that root cause claims are ahistorical and ill-founded, and that they would never be able to resolve in a world where the effects of capitalism aren't because of ideology, but because of a lack of discussion of material conditions. That's the Althusser and Gramsci warrant on their framework. We're also winning that their commodification of suffering and the ballot means that the harms of the K are literally inevitable. Their alternative is nebulous. It's freaking nebulous, and there isn't a single historical example that they provide of a successful dual power other than the Soviet Union, which literally collapsed due to infighting in the first place. On the framework first, I want you to extend across the role of the judge, which is that you're a public intellectual who should evaluate this debate as a matter of competing worldviews. We say that this is an indication as to how you should be really high, holding their framework arguments into, at a high threshold, because in a world where they can't prove as to why this specific form of rhetoric, with a specific form of policy-making rhetoric and incorporating it within the rhetoric of the alternative isn't able to happen, you can also extend across a short-term annihilation argument. The response to that didn't get extended to in the LOR, which specifically talks about how by suspending problem solving that results in short-term annihilation, which is the indication to how the perm would uniquely be able to solve, because not only are we doing the interrogation that they say is so important, but we also are able to solve for poverty that is happening right now. Anything else? I'll answer the rest of the framework stuff that they argue on the K. On the advantage, they only have 2 responses to this, and I think the MG does a really great job responding to this, so you can extend across Tira's responses as to how the stablecoin being inevitable is not the question. It's a matter of who has control over the stablecoin. That's literally what the negative says as well, which means that in a world where the FDIC would be able to monitor these transactions, that would prevent a stablecoin from being used in a way that results in money laundering, and also transactions that result in paying those or advertising human trafficking. That's an indication as to how this form of restriction to the insured banks in the first place is what would allow for stablecoin to, if it's inevitable, actually be used in a positive sense and not result in a literal bursting of a bubble. But the other argument that they talk about is that we're bad where we result in more abuse by cryptocurrency. I think Tira does a really good job asking you to gut check this, because in the world where we've given you warrants from the federal financial crimes report in 2021, which specifically said that human trafficking and abuses of this money is literally possible because stablecoin is not being regulated, and that regulations are needed in order to prevent this abuse from happening in the first place, means that you are going to be buying our warranted analysis as a reason as to why we are able to resolve for poverty. You can extend across the entirety of the internal links and impact scenario, talking about how there's a huge bubble that is just waiting to burst. The Department of Treasury also, this huge bubble waiting to burst is literally going to launch us into a second Great Recession, which results in mass amounts of poverty that takes 7 years off of your life. We say that most tangible impact in this round, most proximal impact in this round to be able to resolve for the impending recession that occurs there. Nebulous impacts aren't contextualized to actual people on the K. The first thing I want you to extend across this tier is a re-articulation of the role of the judge and how this implicates the role of the ballot. We say that as a public intellectual who should evaluate this debate as a matter of competing worldviews, their role of the ballot is not competitive with ours, and that we can incorporate it within our own worldview. You should also extend across the conceded argument, specifically talking about how Althusser and Gramsci literally said that Marx is wrong. The harms of capitalism don't come from ideology or people acting as if they're institutions, but rather it comes from the lack of discussion of material conditions, which means that we are literally a prior question, because we can discuss the material conditions of these people that are going to be falling into poverty and how the stablecoin is being used right now. That means that we come before the K, and this indication is the reason as to why the perm would definitely be able to swamp all of the links. But the next thing I want you to extend across is this argument that totalizing theory is going to be bad. Tira does a really good job articulating why this would result in ahistorical considerations of how ideology or how material conditions are affected, but also these totalized or root cause claims are not reverse causal, which means that this is how we misidentify the actual issue in the first place. That's a combination of factors. It's problematic. That means that we get access to the framework and we frame them out, but also they have conceded the argument talking about how they commodify the ballot, which means that all of our articulations about the relink are going to be reasons as to why they would never be able to their case. That's two reasons of why they can't resolve for K on the alternative. Extend across the permutation, they say it's illegitimate because the propagandizing is the only way we need to go all in or nothing. However, Tierra does a really good job talking about how our framework is discussing praxis in this round, and that we don't have to be institutions or we don't have to be people acting as institutions. We can engage in praxis and incorporate these worldviews. That's why the role of the judge is going to be so important here. But also, they say that the USSR just collapsed in the 90s, but literally our articulation on this argument is that the USSR collapsed because of infighting. That's literally what's due to happen as a result of the alternative. So in a world where you don't have no idea what the hell the alternative does, and that their only historical example is why they will fail.
Yeah, sorry, time just ended. But the point of order on the infighting argument, I think that you say you never say Soviet Union collapse. You say the Bolsheviks get killed. You never articulated infighting in the Soviet Union. And I think that turning the argument and saying that we also don't understand the alternative is definitely new.
The argument that the Bolsheviks were annihilated is literally basically our argument is that the infighting in the Soviet Union was what caused the Bolsheviks to be annihilated. This is all part of the same argument that we were saying that your movement will fail because the USSR is an example and the Bolsheviks are an example of that. So it's an argument. But it's a panel. And also my time's up.
Great debate, y'all.
Yeah, great debate.
Cool, great debate. I'll probably be like a few-ish minutes getting my decision in, and then I'll send it over to you, Keegan, because I think you're chair.
Yep, I think so. Sounds good. Okay, I see my chat flashing at me. Sorry, did y'all both send me? Yes, you did. Are all the debaters here?
DVC
Yes.
is here.
Yeah, I'm here. Tira is in an LD round, but it's okay.
Yeah, I have an LD round to judge, so I will tell y'all what's going on. I will run through my ballot real quick, and then I'm gonna go pick up that ballot. So first of all, congratulations on making SEMS. Super, super exciting. It is a 3-0 decision for the affirmative from University of the Pacific. Claps again. I'll go first so I can get out of here and go judge. Super close round for me. I went back and forth quite a bit. Honestly, coming out of the second opposition speech, I thought it was going to be a neg ballot. Like, I was pretty convinced it was going to be neg. The only thing that I could see going wrong was undercovering the perm. And I was like, well, the second opposition didn't cover it super well, but they still have the rebuttal. And then the rebuttal didn't cover it super well. And I was like, oh. So, like, the big advice I have coming out of this round is if you have like a clear-cut winner, like the beginning of that 2-0, like your first line of that speech wins you the round in 99% of situations, right? The very first thing you say there is like, they dropped the top level framing that the AF is harmful because of reps. That is a priori. They dropped that it's a They dropped that it's a priori. That's your voter, right? The question you have to ask yourself going into how you're going to structure that speech is, what is like the one way they could still win, right? Like, if you have a big winning argument like that, that's like, oh, this is a priori to almost everything else, I think you need to ask yourself, but what's the one thing they could do that goes above that or comes before that? And in this situation, that's the perm, right? And so I think the one place the block kind of undercovered for me was the perm. And then at the point that the rebuttal comes back from the AF and like covers that part of the flow exactly how I need it to be covered, I end up voting AF on the perm. And I think it's just a question of like, when the winning argument for the neg is so clear and it's clear what you're going for and what your top level argument is, you just need to make sure to ask yourself, like, how could the rebuttal still pull this off, and make sure you preempt that a little bit, right? You want to like think as if you're the 2A even when you're debating neg during the block. Other than that, there's some specific stuff on the ballot that hopefully will be kind of helpful to y'all. The one other thing I want to mention is how you react to opponent arguments. DVC, like when they made that argument about the stuff that wasn't on the flow in the perm, your faces showed that you knew you dropped it. And in a world where there's somebody who's like not super comfortable flowing, not super comfortable with fast debate, not super comfortable voting on the flow, don't give them that easy out, right? Like, if the AF says they dropped this argument, and let's say I'm a judge who's not comfortable with fast debate and I'm over here trying to follow and I'm not following, and the AF says they dropped this really important argument, and I see both neg debaters look like, are bad, then like, if I'm that judge, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, I'll vote F, right? Like, I don't know the other judges on this panel. They might also love fast debate and technical stuff and be big old nerds like me, but they also might be more comfortable with like slower debate and not like speed and be looking for any place to like not deal with the speed on the flow. And you kind of gave an easy out to a judge in that situation by doing that. So watch out for that. Something panel logic. But speaking of fast debate, I have LD to go judge. You were all fantastic. All 4 of you are really freaking good debaters. It's like the most fun I've had judging Parley ever. Hopefully some of that stuff helps. If you have questions, your coaches know me, so they can yell at me on Facebook and let me know if you need anything. But good luck with the rest of your tournament. And yeah. Do you have any questions for me before I go do LD?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. You're all great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mark, do you want to go next, or should I?
Sure, I can go.
Okay.
So yeah, I also thought it was a really close round. Honestly, I'm surprised it was a 3-0. For me, I think that I don't buy the permutation. I think that the arguments as to why the permutation wouldn't function make sense. There are some concessions there, but I mean, it's a quality versus like quantity thing for me on the permutation. However, I do think that there's enough mitigation on the solvency and of the alternative that doesn't get addressed or really resolved for me. And I think also that the framing, particularly in the PMR, which I thought was really good, about the affirmative and how the affirmative is functioning in terms of the inevitables that have been talked about throughout the round, for me are enough to lean towards the affirmative.
Yeah. So I was also surprised it was 3-0, but similar stuff sort of to Mark. I didn't really vote on the aft because I think the aft or the permutation, because I don't think the permutation really can resolve this. My biggest issue in this debate was I think that I bought a lot of the negative uplayering on framework. I think that the claims that the aft is indeed an instantiation of harmful capitalism in the long term had with some risk of a long term impact. I think that was true, and I was buying that a lot of that through the block. My main issue here was I think that both the permutation didn't really have any solvency for the alt, but also the alt itself, the negative. I don't think we had enough solvency coming out here talking about how like the ways in which we can like produce like something that is material and that's also going to outweigh or resolve the alpha. I don't think that I was seeing a lot of things that were really tangible in that way, showing what a world of the neg looks like, or like a world post alt looks like. Sorry if my cat's meowing. She is convinced she hasn't eaten in like a month, even though she just got lunch. She doesn't like being locked in rooms though with me. Anyways, that being aside from that, I think that we have a solvency deficit here. I think that the neg correctly isolates though that the AF does have some sort of long-term issues, but so really the thing that makes this a bummer for me is it comes down to me voting that on the AF, these arguments saying that we can materially do some sort of good right now, regulating Coinbase in the short term will do things like probably decrease the risk of unregulated crypto being used in human trafficking. So pragmatically, I'm seeing some sort of good impact, if not an impact that may not have a guarantee that it will be tangible in the long term. But me thinking with my policymaking brain as the app is kind of telling me on the layering that I should also consider the impacts of the app. I'm thinking at the very least then I'm left with a world in which capitalism does occur and these bad things do occur, but I'm not sure what our solution is to that. And then on the other side for the app, I'm left with we can make a material change that will be good for some people. Is that going to guarantee those people will be taken care of forever or that others will be taken care of forever? No, I'm not sure. But ultimately in that world where individuals are ultimately taken out of human trafficking, that's prevented, at the very least, then I'm voting in the short term on the risk of that offense being true and someone materially benefiting from the passing of the affirmative team. So really this debate comes down to, unfortunately, I think for me, a lot of what ifs and a lot of potential like things that could or could not happen. So I'm voting on like a small risk of the impact being true and happening in the world of the AF. So I think there was just a solvency deficit and gap for everyone in the debate because of that. So I think that the big thing for the neg is we should cut these theories. We should get rid of one, jettison one, so we have more time to focus on one of two things. Either we need to expand our solvency more, improve the efficacy of the alternative being true, or we just need to really go hard for the framing question and just completely frame the AF out of the debate and then answer questions like disads against the alternative that the affirmative team is bringing out and then just win that the permutation is not good. I think that you all did win the perm debate. I think that it was just a question of the solvency gap from like the sort of disad / solvency takeout about the Bolsheviks. I think we should strengthen the solvency there as well and prove that like, well, it's not just, it's not just the Bolsheviks that are the only source of communism or of ultimately proving that an anti-capitalist group can still survive. I think that people really are used to like attacking things like the USSR and like the Zapatista. So I think they're just finding some stronger solvency and claims for that. They don't have to be really on even a global or national scale, but just have to be examples and warranted proof of like beneficial communistic like activities and collectives. And then the other thing is I think that one of the framing questions that I think we conceded that we need to strengthen as well is the root cause claim. I think the AF just kind of said this was ahistorical, and then it just kind of went away from there. I think that we can ultimately we are on the right track, but I think we need to go stronger for ahistorical claims, or people who say that ahistorical claims or like root cause claims are ahistorical are exactly promoting the logic of capitalism, right? Like capitalists will always say that it's an ahistorical claim to say that the Middle Passage was a byproduct of capitalism, even though it was the buying, selling, and trading of individuals for commodities. So capitalism will always find ways and will always reinvent the history books and its very like interpretation of what it is to safeguard itself and securitize, even if that means that like things that are actually historically factual are going to be rewritten and called ahistorical, in its very nature. So I think that we should have more of those like claims that target the underpinning and just the very like nature of capitalism, how it recreates and reifies itself in these like institutions and through like our own epistemology and methodology. And I think that'll give us better framing and uplayering so that we can just frame the F out of the debate. But other than that, amazing debate. Hope that's helpful feedback and not just me yelling for 5 minutes. And yeah, great job, everyone.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you, and good luck,
everybody.
y'all.
Good debate.
Thank you. Have a good one.